Because I think many people who will be listening to this, they are most likely or considering this job as a potential career path, right? They're considering medical sales, or they may be just curious. But what would be your top 3 attributes that can help someone to be successful in this job?
You know, I used to want all that kind of keeping up with the Joneses thing when I was younger. You know, I need to have a 4-bedroomed house, and I need to have 3 bathrooms, and I need to have like this car, and everything in life is a trade-off, isn't it? I have all of that. I had to work 2 jobs, so therefore I didn't have much free time to do things that I like to do. And I think my life became quite joyless, really, at that time.
You have all that experience as a nurse too to bring to the table, so you understand how it can be on the other side too. So which makes, I think, you are a very effective salesperson. Even though it's not selling, it's more of a support in the sense of that it's not only about selling something; it's about helping that patient and finding the right solution for that patient. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. This is Annanesterovapodcast, and I'm welcoming my guest today, Julie Davis. Hi, Julie. So nice to see you and hear you. And thank you so much for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
First of all, I want to say that you're joining me from the UK, and I'm currently in the US. So we have a bit of a time difference. So thank you so much. I know it's your evening and my morning, so we're managing that quite well, I think. And I want to say that we just met recently, but we work for the same company, and we share experience in the medical device industry and medical sales. But you have an interesting background and experience how you got into this. And I wanted to talk about that today. I also want to talk about personal growth. I want to talk about how we as people and as people in this industry learn to be better and how we overcome challenges and how it was for you. So I'm very excited and thrilled to hear your story and share that with my audience. And again, thanks for joining.
No problem.
Yeah. So let's start with a little bit of background. So what do you do now and where about you are? And we'll jump right into your story and how you got into this industry after.
Okay. So I was born in the UK, in a small town in the northeast of England, and I kind of haven't moved very far because I live about 400 metres from the house that I grew up in. And I kind of always lived, so I've always lived here, and very early, I think my kind of mum really pushed me into nursing as a career. I don't really remember choosing that, but I think a lot of people end up doing jobs that they didn't really choose, and it just transpires that that's what you end up doing. So, you know, it was kind of assumed early on that I would be a nurse, and that's what I did. So after sixth form college and A-levels and things, I went off and I did my nursing training. And I worked at the NHS in a number of different roles for 22 years. And I think I enjoyed most of them, but I would say I get bored quite easily. So in those nursing jobs, after 2-3 years, I always felt like I needed a change because they weren't challenging anymore. And, you know, I just wasn't getting any fulfillment out of them. So I would always change and switch about. So I did various different roles in critical care nursing and research. And I was a health visitor for quite a prolonged period of time. And I did a management role as well. I would say I was kind of in my mind when I was younger, when I was in my 20s and 30s, my goal in life was to earn the most possible amount of money and live in the biggest house and have the best car. And those were kind of my goals. And that very much directed my career choices, really, I would say. And I applied for jobs that I didn't really want, but the salary was good. So, you know, I can do this. It's just a pay rise. I can do it. And of course, that led to a lot of being unfulfilled and unhappy at work and stressed. But I'm the kind of person who finds it very hard to admit that it's not working and to not admit defeat, but, you know, make a change. Because I always think, well, what's wrong with you? Just, you know, try harder. You know, you'll get to a point where you enjoy it and you like it, and just keep going and, you know, don't stop. And so I kind of ended up in this job. I had some family issues. My brother died quite young and tragically. A few years after that, I kind of was in this management job and I really didn't like it. And I ended up having a mental breakdown. I was working like lots of hours. I was working 2 jobs at that time. So I was doing a lot of hours in my management job. I was doing a lot of weekend working in the A&E department as a nurse. You know, I had a nice big house and I had a nice car and I had all of those things. And from the outside, everybody thought that I had everything.
Yeah,
But
life was great. Yeah.
yeah, but inside I was really, really unhappy and I was struggling because, you know, my job in the management job, it kind of didn't fit with my values at all. And I was having forced to do things that I didn't really believe in every day and drive the service in a direction I didn't want it to go. And I found that really, really, you know, quite demoralizing, really. So anyway, I had a mental breakdown. And at that time, I was very ill, actually. And I didn't realize, you know, I'd been a nurse for a long time and never realized that, you know, a breakdown could have that much impact on a person. And I was very, very sick for a long time. And as a result of that, I actually didn't ever think I would go back to work ever again. I thought that, you know, like, I'll never be able to work because I was struggling even to speak at that time. It was too much effort to string a sentence together. And so my husband and I sold our house at that time and we moved to a very small house, a cheaper house in a different area, and we sold the car and we got rid of everything. And it was a strange thing because although it was one of the worst things that's ever happened to me, it was actually one of the best things that's ever happened to me as well, because it made me completely stop and reevaluate my whole life and where I was going and what I wanted to do. And I had you know, I had some counselling at that time. It was very interesting because we explored that a lot, and your goals in life and what, you know, what you're trying to achieve, and, you know, why do you have to go there on the fastest trajectory? Why can't you take a slower route there and do some interesting things on the way and just enjoy life a little bit more instead of just working so hard to, you know. Anyway, so I ended up going back to a nursing job after about a year of being off. I went back to a nursing job and a part-time job, and I went back to work in neuroradiology. And I'd worked there previously, and it's an area that I was very interested in because one of my aunties had died from an aneurysm rupture when she was 40. And so it was interesting, personal interest for me. And I always liked neuro nursing anyway. So I kind of went back there and I enjoyed it. But again, I don't know what, you know, the NHS, frustrating, super frustrating. So after a couple of years of trying to improve things and make things better, I can't take this anymore. I'm going to have to do something else. And I went off to do another job, a research job. And then it was interesting how I fell into my current role in sales, because I wasn't really, I've never considered this as a career option ever, because I think I'm the least salesy person I've ever met in my life. And I never would have chosen it. But I was looking on Facebook, and the company that I currently work for, there was a post on there saying that they were looking for a team member and somebody in the Northeast who had knowledge of neuroradiology, and I kind of ticked all the boxes, but I thought, oh, it's not really my thing. But I messaged the guy anyway, the boss, and said, you know, like, I don't think it's for me, but, you know, just out of interest, how much is the salary? And he said, you know, come and have a chat with me, and we'll just have a chat, because it depends on your experience and it's not a set salary, and you know, come and have a talk. And I was really like reluctant. No, it's not for me. And anyway, I went. We had a coffee and we had a talk, and I kept saying, no, it's not for me. I definitely don't want to do that sales. No, you know, he was like, I don't want a salesperson, and you're great, you'll be fantastic. And I was just like, no, I'm not really interested. And I was really reluctant. I thought it was like the worst interview ever. And he was really keen to have me for some reason. And anyway, he made me an offer, and thought, right, I'll go for it, which was a super scary change, because I'd been in the NHS for 22 years, and at that time, and you know, it's a big organisation, and you've got like a lot of security, job security, and sick pay, and lots of holidays, and pension, and all of these things. And I'd never worked for another company, so I was like a bit scared about it, really, but I'll just go for it and see what happens. So I did. I went for it, and it was absolutely awful, and I hated it for 2 years. And I literally just felt like I was failing continually, because in my mind, I think I've always tried to be what people want me to be, or I've tried to be what I think I should be. So when I was a manager, I tried to be what I thought a manager should be, which wasn't really me, I wasn't really being true to myself. And again, I came into this job and I was a bit like, right, I need to be a salesperson, but I'm not a salesperson. It's just not me. I'm not that person at all. And I found it really hard at first because I don't really like change. I find change quite difficult. And there's absolutely no structure in my job. And so I got here. It was a small company I worked for. And there was no kind of policies, procedures, and no direction. And it was just kind of, I think I spent 3 or 4 days with my boss, and then he was like, oh, yeah, crack on, just, go on, do your thing. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do now?
I do remember that feeling, as I mentioned to you before. Like, I remember that too, when you just start and you're being thrown into it, and it's just like you have to figure out on your own.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my God, I don't like none of this. Like, I don't understand any of it. Like, I don't understand how to get into visit somebody. Like even driving places. That was a huge thing for me because, like I said, I live in the same town. I've always lived here, and the places I drive to now for the day. Normally, I wouldn't dream of driving to those places just for this and coming back in the same day. That to me was like, got to go for at least 2 nights. It's a 2.5 hour drive, man. Now,
you do it in one day all the time, probably.
Yeah,
I know.
But at the time, it was a huge culture shock to me, and I had no, like I said, there was no policies and procedures and guidance and structure, and I was very much kind of just left on my own, which now I love. It's my favourite part of the job. But at first, it was quite like, I just kept thinking, I'm not doing it. I must be doing it wrong. I'm not doing it right. I must be doing something wrong. And my expectations of myself have always been quite high. So I think I always feel like I should be doing better than I am. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And if things aren't going great, I think it's me. I should be doing better. And I always put myself under pressure. And anyway, so that transition was very difficult. And I was really, I was very anxious all of the time because I was looking at my targets and I was never meeting any of them. And I was thinking, oh, it's definitely not for me. And I kept ringing my boss and saying, look, I think I'm going to have a notice in. I don't think it's, no, you're doing great. We're really happy. You're doing great. I was thinking, well, I'm clearly not, I haven't sold anything all year. And he was very supportive, actually. And I have a great relationship with him, a very open and honest relationship, which is great. It's another favourite part of my job, that I can be myself with him completely. And if I'm feeling stressed or if I'm not happy, and I've been very open with him about my sort of mental health struggles, and he's been very supportive, which strangely enough, you don't get that in the NHS. They're not supportive of mental health problems. So that's been a good part of the job. So anyway, time went on, and I kind of just after a couple of years, I just started to feel more comfortable, and got to know people a bit more at work, and now I've been
acceptance of the chaos, maybe.
Yeah, and that chaos as well. I'm very much a planner, and I'm a really I like to know what I'm doing. And at first, I was so stressed because I'd make dinner plans with friends, we'll meet for dinner at 6 p.m. and never ever got back for dinner ever. It's constantly, in the middle of a case, thinking, oh, am I going to have to let them down again? And I hate letting people down, so I'd be really stressed about that. And it took me a while to just accept that I can't make plans through the week, and I never do now. It's just my life is different now, and my plan changes on a daily basis, and throughout the day it can change as well. And that isn't something that I found easy to cope with, but as time has moved on, that's something that I kind of enjoy a little bit now, because, when I was a health visitor, for example, I would look in my diary and think, oh God, this is what I've got scheduled in all week. Oh, that'll be a nightmare. That meeting will be awful. Whereas I never do that in this job, because I look in my diary and I think, yeah, it'll probably all change. So that's just I'm not going to get stressed about what's happening, because none of it will probably happen, So
yeah, that's one of the things I think what I found with my job too. So once you let that go and you get used to it, it actually teaches you how not to stress out about small things anymore.
Yeah.
So you really have to prioritize what you can stress about versus what you cannot control. And I think that was the biggest gift that I got from this job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, would you agree?
Completely. And I don't, I think I don't. I try very hard, but I don't put myself under enormous pressure if if I'm a doctor at short notice asks me for something and I can't get it to them. I used to feel terrible, but now I just think, well, I've done my best. Some of it is to do with him as well, and I would say I'm a lot more flexible than I used to be, and I don't stress so much on the little things. But but an interesting change, and so I've been doing this job now for about 8.5 years, and I actually it's the first time ever in my career that I've never felt like I need to change. Like I really like it, and I absolutely love. I just love getting a good result for the patient. So the money is so interesting because the money, I don't chase the money like I used to in my 30s. I don't care really about that sort of thing anymore. I think my life experience has changed that for me, and that's not what drives me anymore. And I'm not a materialistic person, but I'm much more content and happy with what I've got. And that the reward I get from work isn't financial. It's getting a good result for the patient and being able to teach, the nurses and radiographers and the doctors, and to feel that I've contributed something positive.
You have all that experience as a nurse too to bring to the table, so you understand how it can be on the other side too, which makes, I think, you a very effective salesperson, even though it's not selling, it's more of a support. It's more of to me, it's more of a support, because what we do, and I guess that will be nice to know for my listeners, that type of devices that we sell, they are being used for very technical, quite complicated procedures for people with stroke, for stroke prevention. And it does take a certain amount of knowledge. It does take a certain amount of, I guess, the diligence, the skills, and you need to be there and support. So I'm trying to change the perception of the sales job, I think, here too, in the sense of that it's not only about selling something, it's about helping the patient and finding the right solution for that patient. And Absolutely. Yes, you need to be aware what your product can do, but you also need to be aware what it cannot do, and something else can. And once you have all that, you can definitely see what's going on and how you can be something useful to the team, right? To the team working with that patient. So I think that's the biggest misconception that some people have about this job. And when they hear, like you said, like they think you need to be salesy. Well, yeah, you do need to have some sort of a sense of business. And at the end of the day, that's the job. But it's not only about selling something. It's about helping that patient, being helped to that doctor, to a nurse, to a technician. So I think that's an important part. And I think your story is, in my opinion, it's just so fantastic. I'm so happy that you're sharing that, because I've spoken with some nurses and people from clinical background, and they're trying to make that change, but they're scared for the same reason as you were, and they don't know how to approach it. And they ask me questions. And I think your story could be a really good example for them, just how you can change and you can adapt and you can see it from the different side, and you still can be happy, right? So you're still in your own field. So that's what I hear from you, from your story.
I mean, I definitely, like I said, I definitely feel that my contribution to patients now is greater than it was when I was a nurse.
Wow.
And which is quite amazing, really, and I get a lot more job satisfaction. I think in the NHS, it's very hard to have job satisfaction because there's so many restrictions on that. There's things that are totally out of your control. Equipment that you need, or just basic things like you can't get clean sheets for someone's bed, and it's things like that prevent you from doing a good job every day, and it just leads to it's terrible. You just go home feeling terrible every day that you've not done the best for people, and and I think a lot of people in the NHS feel the same. I talk to them a lot, obviously, and this is why they're all currently on strike, because it's not about the money, it's about the lack of resources and the fact that people are forced to do a suboptimal job, which they are. It's not good.
Because I think when they enter the job force, the workforce in NHS, or let's say in Canada, very similar setup actually with Canadian healthcare, right? So I can relate to it I can understand it quite well from your perspective. So I think when people get into it, they have a very different idea how it's supposed to work. And once they are in the system, they feel very differently. And that's why I think, especially now, and especially after COVID, after all the overworking situations when nurses felt unappreciated, I think that's when I see that more and more people trying to look for something else, somewhere else. And your story, again, hearing it, it's really, I guess it gives hope to those people who are looking for something new and change. I'm not saying it's for everyone. It may not be for everyone, but it could be an option for some people.
Definitely. And I think I would say, yes, it's not for everyone. But I think, and I think you might agree, Anna, I think from when we were speaking before that, I think the most important part of my role is building relationships with people. And that's something that I've always found to be a strength. And throughout all of my nursing career, that I can build relationships with most people on different levels. And I think, I've like recently been looking at kind of at myself quite a lot to kind of understand myself a little bit more. And, I would classify myself as like a highly sensitive person. And I think that comes with lots of challenges, but it also comes with, some great qualities. So, I'm very perceptive and I can read a room quite quickly when I go into it. And when I go into the lab, I know that like if something's off, if someone's upset, if something's happened straight away, I know that something's not right and I can tread carefully. And, I know when something's going to kick off usually with, with the doctor or whatever. And I kind of, I think a lot of those personality traits that I've got make life, they do make life easier, but they can equally, some of them can make life a lot harder as well. So it's like, rejection. I don't like rejection at all. And I take it very personally when, if they don't want to use my device, I used to take that really personally, I'd be like, oh my God, like, I feel totally rejected, but like, I don't know. I'm sort of getting better at that. And, I think I didn't really understand myself as a person very much, really. And I've been doing a lot of work on that over the last few years. When I would say I was very introverted. I'm still quite an introverted person. And when I first started doing, my sales job, oh my God, like it's all taking people out for dinner and, going to these conferences and these work events. And like the worst thing ever is like networking at these, like, oh my God, like I hate it. And I used to think, oh my God, I have to love it. I have to be really good at that. And I've got to like get better. And going back to that kind of, thinking I've got to be perfect in every scenario and do everything, instead of thinking, like we all have strengths and weaknesses, and that's something that I really don't like, like this networking thing, making small talk with people who ordinarily I wouldn't really talk to, like, and I used to think, oh, this is awful. And, and there was a huge amount of alcohol involved at these events. And I kind of realized that, like, I'm actually drinking quite a lot to get through these events. When I thought about it, I'd been drinking quite a lot as a nurse as well, because that's a big problem with, the medical profession. A lot of people drink heavily. And I thought, my God, like, yeah, I'm actually developing a bit of a problem here. So I decided that I would stop drinking completely, which I did just over 3 years ago. And that kind of gave me an opportunity to really sort of explore myself as a person and, the reason why I was drinking and what I was afraid of. And it brought home to me, like, I used to think, oh God, I can't possibly go to this function unless I've had a glass of wine first, because like I feel quite anxious about it, social anxiety. And but then I'd go to them and think, actually I can do it, that's great, I can do it, I don't need to have a drink, it's absolutely fine. So I've been working like on a lot of personal development stuff and kind of looking at like how why I am the way I am, really, and understanding myself a lot more, which I think is quite bizarre. Like, 'cause I'm nearly 50 now. Before I've got round to that, but I think it's ongoing, isn't it, throughout your life?
So impressive, because I think that level of self-awareness, I think some people never get to that, even thinking those thoughts that you're just mentioning and that work that you've done. Some people never get to that point, and I think that's the most devastating thing you can do in your lifetime, because we are different and we have to go through those soul-searching moments. But I think also because you've had a couple, and especially some tough ones, and I think through a tough time, like you said, even though it's a tough time, that's probably the time where you have no longer room for that, oh, I'm going to patch it up, pretend nothing is happening, because you're at such a low, like pretty much at the bottom, right? So you can't afford that anymore. So you have to face it.
Yeah.
And I think this
kind
is
of,
where
yeah,
that jump happens afterwards, because you have
absolutely.
you don't have strength anymore. You don't have that, I don't know, energy to fight it, pretend that nothing is happening. So you have to deal with it. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's what's happening. Some people are just afraid to admit that they're not living the life they wanted to live,
Yeah. Yeah.
doing things they don't want to do.
Yeah. And I think that's, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a huge risk taker as a person. And yeah, I think, but I was living a life that I didn't want to live. Absolutely. And I was, I wasn't being true to myself. And that's very damaging. And it's interesting now because I just, as I'm moving forward, I'm much more true to myself. And yeah, it's uncomfortable and it's tough sometimes to do things. And, there's lots of challenges along the way, but, I feel like I'm learning about myself all the time and, realizing that I can, I can do more than I thought I could do. And actually, if I don't like something or I'm not very good at something, that's okay because, we're all human and nobody's perfect.
That's awesome. And what would you say, let's say if you would have to give an advice to a nurse right now who's working in the system but is not as happy as she or he thought they would be in their position, and they're trying to make that change, but they're scared for the same reasons that you were scared when you were at that job and finding that you were not happy, even though you were doing it, but it wasn't really giving you that fulfillment, but you were scared to make a change because you've been working for 20 years, right? Like it feels very uncomfortable leaving something you know very well, and moving to something completely different. So what would you tell them? Like, what would be your maybe suggestion, like a couple of tips you can give them? So why do you think they should consider and try? So what helped you in the moment? You took that job, right? So you said like it was a horrible interview, but you still took it. So what was that? You know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to change something. So because you did.
Yeah, I think I just thought, well, I was lucky because I say I was lucky. I'd met my current husband and we'd just met each other actually, and so I lived on my own and I had a mortgage and everything, and at that time, and I was quite obviously anxious, if it doesn't work out, I've got to pay the bills and everything. He was very supportive, so that helped me because he said I'll help you out if things don't financially, if things don't go well until you get something else. I think as a nurse, I've kept up my registration because in case I ever wanted to go back. So that was a bit of a security blanket as well, because I knew I could always go back to nursing. If it didn't work out, I could always go back and it's not the end of the world. And I think sometimes if you don't try something, you always regret it, that you never tried it. And I think that's one of the worst things in life, to look back and have massive regrets that you never tried things. So I would say if people are thinking about it, definitely maybe spend some time with somebody in the job to see what it's actually like. So I would say if anyone's thinking about it, look into it and explore it and get a good idea of what it's like first. Maybe try and get a position that is with something that you're interested in already. So neuro was something that I was particularly interested in. So I was really blessed to get that job because there's not that many jobs around. But there's lots of sales jobs in different medical specialties. There's tons of them, isn't there? So maybe look for something that you're familiar with, because it would make the transition a bit easier, I think. And just go for it if you can. Why not? Just try it. And yeah.
And you actually touched on an interesting point here about how she saw sales reps coming, buying sandwiches for everyone, happy all the time and just coming over. And I think that's also perception from some people in the system, right? So, and I think your story shows that salespeople can be as invested in the process as the clinical team sometimes, and they do care, and the work that they need to do on top of, yes, we need to help patients, doctors, nurses, but we also have plans, targets, scheduling, chaos, managers, company change things, companies get acquired, management can change, demands can change, the messaging that we need to send to our customers can change, and it's all on us. Or if something goes wrong, it's also on people who sell, right? Because that you would be the first one to be blamed for it. So you need to take that and deliver it to the company and convince them. So I think people do not realize that part of the job, which I'm also trying to change, and I'm glad that you touched on it. So maybe can you tell me a little bit more how you saw salespeople when you were in the shoes of the nurse? How did you perceive that, and how now your opinion is different about the job.
Yeah, well, I always thought I thought they were a bit airy-fairy. They just flounced around and didn't do very much and just bought coffee for the doctor, to be honest.
And maybe some of them are. I don't know, because maybe some of it can be true.
I also thought that there were a huge, I'm trying not to swear here, a huge pain in their bleep, 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 because, you know, when you were trying to do the case as a nurse, they were always in the way and stood there in the way, and where you needed to get to, they were there and asking questions at the inappropriate times and things. And I think that's something I'm very conscious of, because I don't want to be that person who's in the way and a pest. And I'm very conscious of that. But yeah, I didn't for a second understand what the job was really like. And I was laughing because I was saying to my boss, you know, the other week, I said, hey, you sent me off on a workshop. I'd only been doing the job about 4 weeks, and you were like, all right, yeah, I can take this guy to Essen to a workshop. And I was like, all right, great. And I was thinking, I don't know even what country Essen's in. I don't know how to book a flight, because I've always just gone through a travel agent and gone on a package holiday. That's all I've ever done in my life, like twice a year, you know, like I don't know when I get to the year end, like what do we do about transport and taxis? And I had no idea about what to do, but I thought, I obviously should know this, so I'm not going to ask him. Like, I'll just wing it a bit. And so I went off with this doctor. We got the flight stuff. I found out where it was, you know, we went and we got the flight, and then we got to the hotel, and then he said, you know, where are we going tonight for dinner? And I thought, oh, am I supposed to do so? I just said, oh, I'm not that hungry. I'm just going to have an early night. And just left him the next day. So me and the doctor laugh about it now. He's a good friend. And he said, do you remember that time you took me to the workshop and I had to have a Snickers out the minibar for my dinner? We're just kind of like, yeah, all of these, like, everything was just all new to me and all alien, and every single thing I had to learn. And it was just, yeah, I mean, the stress, unbelievable, really, just such a huge change. But now that now I feel like I'm very not comfortable with it, because I think being too comfortable is a bad thing, because I know from experience I get bored and then I want to move on. I think my job is constantly changing, and the area that we work in, it's very dynamic. There's lots of new devices all the time and new technologies and things to learn all the time. And the relationships with people, that's something ongoing, isn't it? That's you're constantly building on that. And so, yeah, I love it. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable, but I'm at a level where I feel like I know what I'm doing a bit more. I book dinner now when I take doctors to workshops.
It's funny.
Yeah.
But I think that also makes you who you are, and why that doctor is probably appreciating you as much as he can. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, yeah, that's something as well that I've kind of over the last few years, like I've tried to be more authentic and genuine, you know, with my doctors I work with everybody really. Like I kind of used to, I think as a nurse, you're very much cultured into being this professional robot and don't show opinion, you know, don't show any feelings, and don't, you can't say this and you can't do that. And, you know, I think there's been professional, and then I think there's, you know, being too, I don't know, like not being real. And I think you can't build relationships with people if you're not genuine and authentic. And I think I'm a lot more now. I'm very honest and open with my doctors, and I actually talk to a lot of them about my mental health problems. And it's quite nice, because a lot of I can recognise when someone is struggling, and quite a lot of them, you know, talk to me, message me personally about issues and phone me if they're struggling with something. And I think that's great that we can support each other in that way. Because the stigma is still huge in the NHS, and I think it's still huge in England, the stigma against mental health. Yeah.
And stigma, you mean in NHS, you mean in terms of the employees? So if they have any issues, it's basically don't complain, move on. That's what you mean? That's how it's been perceived?
It's kind of, yeah, it's not very well received by management. So, you know, if you're not very well with your mental health, it's not, I wouldn't say, you know, they don't think it's as important as a physical problem. And, you know, and doctors quite a lot of doctors won't even tell anybody at work that they've got an issue, because they're like, oh no, that they make life very difficult for you, and they'll try and get me out of. They won't want me to operate on patients if they know that I've got depression, and and I think that's terrible, because we're all human and we all go through things, and it's not helpful to make people feel embarrassed and that they have to hide these things. So that's quite sad. Really, it makes me quite sad.
Yeah, and I think it would be similar in Canada as well in terms, again, I don't think I have enough reference points to make a conclusion out of it, but I would imagine it would be similar in terms of how people are maybe not telling the full truth, and maybe they don't have as much support as needed sometimes. And I think COVID time somehow surfaced it too, because obviously people got burned at work. They overworked, they were overstressed. And I think that led to lots of nurses leaving their jobs in Canada.
Yeah.
Lots of nurses were actually forced to leave jobs because of this vaccination policies and everything. And then the system came into a problem because we didn't have enough nurses. And they were starting asking to those nurses to come back, which was already late. So I think that also caused a lot of tension. It's already a hard job, like you described it. In general, but then it created even more tension. So I think COVID, in a way, again, because it was a tough situation, surfaced out some of those issues, and I think mental health was one of them. But I still don't know how that can be fixed or changed. And do you think just talking about it would make it easier, or giving more support from I don't know, employers, system? And if there's a support, what kind of support would be a good one? Do you have any thoughts or ideas around that?
I don't know, because it's one of them things that just feels so big. Like, where to start with it? Like in the UK, there's very little, in terms of support and services for mental health problems, and there's very little funding for mental health issues, and say if I went to the GP and said, I'd like to access some counselling, it'd be like 8-9 month waiting list to even have a first session. So unless you can afford to pay for it, you can't have that. And I don't know. I think it's, I think the whole thing's just needs a huge overhaul. And it's difficult because I know from being a manager as well, you have the bare minimum staff, and if somebody goes off on sick leave, you want to be sympathetic to them and supportive, but also that's having an impact on everybody else who's left there to pick up the extra work. And so you're kind of trying to balance that off and trying to get the person back, but not get them back too soon. And it's really tough, actually. There's just no slack in the system at all. There's no slack, and one person goes off on the sick and everything just crumbles, and it's it's bad.
Because I don't have a solution myself, and I have to share, I've been to the situation myself just a little bit over a year ago, well, maybe 2 years now, when I had a chronic insomnia. And again, in the Canadian system, if you qualify for chronic insomnia, you can get access to a doctor who's specializing in that, right? So you can. But when I called them finally, and to qualify, you have to wait for 4 months. So you have to prove that for 4 months you can't sleep. So then you qualify for chronic. Then
if
you
you're still alive.
Access. But that wasn't the biggest thing. So 4 months in, on the 5th month, I reach out to that service saying that I am already in chronic stage and I need help. And the first available appointment was 4 months from that date. I'm like, well, in 4 months, there are two options. Either I'm going to go crazy, one way or another. I'll have to help myself, which I did. Because 4 months of waiting might be detrimental for someone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when I spoke with the doctor, when I finally got to the doctor, I was already better at the time. So I was already getting out of it. And he said, that shouldn't be like that. It's not good. I'm like, well, what do we do? Because I asked him, how come the wait list is so big and how come we can't fix that? And I don't have an answer, and I don't think anyone does, but it's scary. Nobody talks about it. No. And I was shocked because I'm like, okay, 4 months wait, that could be horrible. You already can't sleep for 4 or 5 months, and another 4, I don't know what's going to happen then, right? You need to have some sort of therapy. You need to get something.
Absolutely. That's terrible. Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah.
Anyways, it's just something, again, everything is good, and those moments are also good moments eventually when you look back. I feel like that was a good thing for me to overcome it myself. But from a systemic perspective, I think something needs to be changed. Otherwise, people will have more and more issues.
Definitely.
Anyway, but it's just, and it's your story. Like, your story is very representative of that as well. And when you're going through a tough time, I don't think you had a lot of support, and you had to obviously go through many things on your own, right? So
Yeah. But then, like I said, I think, it totally stopped me, and it stopped me dead in my tracks, and it made me completely reevaluate my whole life. And, it set me off in a completely different direction. And that was great, really. Like, I often think, if that hadn't happened, what would I be doing now? I'd probably be doing the job I was aiming for, that probably wouldn't have been a very happy job, but I would have felt trapped there because of the salary and everything. And it's I just think I'm grateful that it did happen. And it might sound strange, but I think a lot of people say the same about having sort of mental health breakdowns. And I think all of these big life events like bereavements, and illness, and all of those things change your perspective on life, don't they? And make you look at things completely differently, which it is a gift when you get to that initial stage where it's very painful and difficult. It is a gift to be able to stop and just think about things without, it's like everything becomes, like you say, everything's pared back, isn't it, to the absolute basic, and then you just, you've got time then to think without all of everything else going on around you. Yeah.
Why do you think we're getting so caught up on that earnings and the material things? We need to have that big house, big car. Why do you think people get into that way of thinking while sacrificing some of their true desires, maybe? What do you think causes it?
I think it's just society in general, sort of. I think you're led to believe that success is, linked with how much you earn and how much you've got and how big your house is and how many foreign holidays you have. And I think, it's social media obviously plays a big part in that. You do, don't you? You do, get, when you buy something new, you do get a bit of a dopamine hit, but it doesn't last very long, does it? And I think, I used to want all that kind of keeping up with the Joneses thing when I was younger. I need to have a 4-bedroomed house, and I need to have 3 bathrooms, and I need to have like this car, but it's all, everything in life is a trade-off, isn't it? Like, and for that, like, to have all of that, I had to work 2 jobs, and so therefore I didn't have much free time to do things that I like to do. And I was also studying at that time, so I was studying for masters and studying the teaching qualification and studying counselling qualifications and various things. And, so I had very limited time to do things that, energised me and made me feel happy and brought me joy. And I think my life became quite joyless, really, at that time. And I think, I think it's just society, isn't it? I don't know if that'll ever change. Advertising is a big thing, isn't it? I was listening to some, podcast. I don't know if you've listened to any of his stuff, Johan Hari, and he's a very interesting guy, and he's wrote some fantastic books as well. And he was saying that there was a study done, I think it was in America, and they looked at sort of preschool children, very young children, and they showed them a video of a little boy who was really nice and smiley, and come and play with my toys and we can share. And then they showed them an advert of a toy that was like really popular at that time, and then they showed them a video of a different boy, and he had the toy, but he was really horrible. And on this, and he was saying, "You're not playing with my toy, and I won't share with you, and I don't like you." And he was quite nasty. And when they asked all of the children, they all wanted to play with the horrible boy who had the nice toy, not the nice boy. Yeah, and he was saying, that just shows how powerful advertising is, and it's kind of, even from being very young, how it impacts on you thought process, and that's what you need to be happy. You need that toy, you need that mobile phone, you need them jeans, like whatever it is, you need to have this to be happy, or you're never going to be happy. And even as very young children, it's having the impact and the result that they want it to have, which is quite sad, really.
No. But I actually have to play devil's advocate here a little bit. And that's my favorite thing to do. But at the same time, what I also see nowadays, when people are trying to discourage kids and young adults from doing anything. So that's another side of this whole situation. So I think when we described for now, and with your story, in the sense of you are an achiever, you want to have more, you are striving for more and more and more. Maybe you went too far in a place where, because of desires to own things, you forgot about your own happiness, what makes you truly happy and who you are. So that's one maybe extreme. But now what I see, when people are not passionate about anything, they've been told, be free, do whatever you want, don't stress, enjoy life. But I also see the negative effect of that way of thinking, because then when you don't have goals, when you do not have anything to strive for or something to achieve, then you lose that motivation. You are sitting on the couch, and actually people do develop some forms of, I don't even know how to call it, because I don't know, people, because I've met people like that and they just want nothing. To me, that's also part that is taking away from who we are, because I think as people, we do want to have a goal. We do want to have something we want to strive for.
Absolutely.
So it's important to have that balance, but I don't know how to. So what do you think about that? Do you feel the same way, that there is a bit of a push on the other extreme?
Yeah. And I kind of, I totally agree with you. And I think it is balance. And, I think for me, what I strive for now is, I think success is being content and, having some joy in your life. And so I love traveling. I like traveling. And so that's something that I go to work so I can do some traveling and see different places. And so, I spend my money on that sort of thing because I enjoy that. And but I think also I get, like I said earlier, I get a lot of reward from, doing a good job at work. So that to me is more important, to have that recognition, to feel like I've contributed to something. That's more important than the salary to me. Mm-hmm. Which is interesting, because now I've got the highest salary that I've ever had when I'm not striving for that anymore, which is quite bizarre as well, isn't it? It's like, interesting, but there you go.
Yeah. But I think that those are the results of self-work. And also when you let go and you're not chasing something too much, it comes easier.
Yeah.
Well, I guess all the books
control everything.
Yeah. All the books that they're written about it, they just talk about it, but it's hard to master that part, because we all, one way or another, like you said, advertising can skew our attention. Something else can pick up on it. Sometimes we're too busy to think about it. And it's just too easy to get into that nonstop, I don't know, what is it, like the life revolving cycle of chasing something all the time. And we just can't stop and let go and see what really matters. But I root for the balance, because I think when you do not have anything to strive for, and you don't want to have anything, it's also a bad thing. So to me, this is where you need to find that balance.
And I do buy things. Of course I do. I buy things, but I'm just not crazy at buying. I don't feel the need to have the £500,000 house, and a really expensive car, But it's like whatever makes you happy, isn't it? I think that's what you need to. And everyone's different, obviously, as well. That might make some people happy, and that's fine if that's what makes them happy. Go for it. It didn't work for me.
No, but I think your story actually shows how you can find yourself in all of it, and yet you still can get what you wanted. So to me, that's the most beautiful part about your story, that you came from one way of thinking to another, and yet you were actually getting more. Like you said, your salary is probably the highest, you feel the freest, and you can do things you love and enjoy. So I think that's what people truly need to strive for.
Yeah. It's all balance, isn't it? Definitely. All balance. Yeah.
And if we go back to your story a little bit more on the medical sales side, what would be your top 3 qualities that you think a person needs to possess in order to be successful in this role, in this job. Because I think many people who will be listening to this, they are most likely or considering this job as a potential career path, right? They're considering medical sales, or they may be just curious. But what would be your top 3 attributes that can help someone to be successful in this job?
I think you've got to be very organised, good communicator, and very flexible. I think. I mean, I could go on forever. You just need to be very resilient, don't you? And you need to, persevere and not take things personally. And there's so many things, isn't there? I think, but yeah. But yeah, I think definitely being organised is key, and being flexible, being able to change your plan and work with that and not get too stressed by it.
Sure. Be fine with that. Yeah. In rejection, accepting rejection. That's what you mentioned already. I actually wanted to say, I think that's the biggest thing that people dwell on. And that's something I suggest, like when I talk to students that approach me and they ask me to tell them about my story, I usually tell them, like, I think everyone needs to have a little bit of sales experience in their lifetime just to learn how to deal with rejection. Because we all tend to think it's personal, something's wrong with us. But once you find that it's not about you, it's about the situation, maybe it's about the particular situation or something else was in a way, not to blame other factors. I'm not a blamer. It's not about blaming someone else. It's more of acceptance that the rejection that you received today, it's not about you personally. I think everyone needs to get that experience. And you already touched on it because you said, like, that was tough and you're still getting over that, but it's important. And
I'm getting better at it, but
So what helps you? It's just like experience. You just learn that it wasn't something about you, and you just move on. So what's helping you to get better with the rejection and accepting the rejection?
I think that just from sort of general personal development, like trying not to think everything's about me all the time. Because it's so easy to do that, isn't it? As well, I don't know, to get a bit paranoid and think everything's about you and everything negative is all directed at you. And I think in general, I'm trying to get better at that. I wouldn't say I've got huge confidence and self-esteem, but I'm quite narcissistic in that respect. If it's something negative, I think it's all about me.
I actually had a guest on my podcast just 2 episodes ago, and he's a really, really good networker. So he's a friend of mine, and he's really good at networking. He enters the room, he can talk to anyone about anything. And that was his tip. He's like, we're spending too much time thinking about people who think about us. While we think about what they're thinking about us versus changing the whole paradigm. What about you go into the event and ask them and think about them? So that was his biggest tip. And for the audience listening, so you can go and check. It's with Angelo. So I think it's episode 4. So he was actually saying that. He's like, stop thinking about you, what people think about you. It's not all about us.
They're all about you all the time.
Exactly. So I think that also can be helpful for people so they can actually rethink. And once you start changing your way of thinking, it gets easier, I think. Well, coming from my experience, because I've been through that challenging time too, when everything was on me and I felt I was not good enough, and I failed something. Then you realize it's not about you. You didn't fail. It was just situational, or maybe that person had a bad day that particular moment. That happened too. But the next time you see the same person, the reaction to your proposition is completely different. So it's a very, very different perception once you let it go and just make it easier for yourself. Actually, one more thing that I just thought while you were talking about your observation that people in the system having some issues with alcohol consumption. And I actually never thought about it and never really, I guess I just never thought about it. And I think it's important to mention because you said that in the medical profession, you saw that happening quite a bit. And why do you think that is? Is it a stress level and that's how people are trying to cope? And can we talk maybe a little bit more about that just from your observation? So what do you think drives that?
I think a lot of it is stress. I think, binge drinking is huge in sort of, in the UK. I mean, it's particularly big in the UK, the culture of binge drinking. And it's yeah, I mean, if you went to a party with a group of nurses or doctors, like everybody would be so drunk. It's like it's crazy, and so you're sort of cultured into that as well, like quite early, and yeah. I don't really know. I mean, there's lots of you could talk about alcohol forever, I think, but and not really still understand it all. But people drink for various reasons, don't they? But I do think stress is a big one. I mean, every day, I would say every single day when I'm in the lab, at least one person will say, "Oh God, I can't wait to get home. Gin and tonic. I'm going to have a large one," or "Oh my God, I need wine." And when I offer to get coffees for everyone, like, "What can I get you?" "Oh, I need a pint. Can I have a pint of lager?" And it's like every day, it's brought up, and I think it's a big thing. And I think, yeah.
But do you think that also helps people to loosen up a little bit? Do you think it's a cultural thing too?
Yes, for
Okay.
me it was because like I said, I was quite socially anxious, and I still am. And I felt like I had to. Oh my God, I've got to go in the room and talk to everybody, and I've got to get around every single person, all 500 of them tonight in 2 hours. And I think yeah, I used to find it easier if I'd had a drink to go into those events. And I'm quite horrified now because I go into them events and I think, oh my God, I don't think anyone.
But do you feel better now when you go and you're not drinking? So do you feel that you overcame that fear or uncomfortable feeling that you experienced before?
Yeah, I
Or
can
not really?
I wouldn't say that, like, I can do it, and
Okay.
and I think it's getting easier with more practice, I would say. But sort of socially, I would just avoid them events. But with it, because it's work, I have to do them, and so I will do them. But yeah, I kind of, I don't feel like I've got to stay all night anymore. It's like the conference we recently went to. Like, whereas before, I would have got there and I would have stayed till I would have been the last person there, and I would have sort of felt like to talk to everybody. And now I don't. I go and I'll chat to a few different people, and I'll sort of. I will bimble around the room a little bit and chat to a few people, and I'll eat and I'll stay. But then when I start feeling really tired, which I do because I get peopled out, part of my personality. When I'm with people, it's very draining for me, so I can do it, but I find it very exhausting. So when I get to that point now, I allow myself to leave and go to bed. I just think it's fine. It's like they don't need me there. But I mean, it's different, obviously, if I take doctors out for dinner. That's different. But
Of course.
yeah, I allow myself. I think I just cut myself a little bit more slack, which is fine, and yeah.
I think it's a very valuable perspective, honestly, because I think it puts in perspective your feeling if you're in the industry. Not everyone is social butterfly to the extent like you want to talk to everyone all the time. It puts people who are in the room with you also into that position that you need to understand that people can be different and they can deal with this situation differently. It doesn't mean that they're bad at their jobs.
No.
It doesn't mean that they don't care, because they do.
Yeah.
Because even for me, like, I'm an extrovert, but even for me, social events and big events, they're exhausting. It's just energy, because you talk to everyone and you try to make an impression, you try to get connected, you try to ask, you try to be cautious of how do they feel. So it's going to drain energy one way or another. So I think it's important what you just shared. It's amazing, because I think people need to know, even if it's not your strongest suit, you can still find that compromise, right?
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
find a compromise, do your job, feel good about what you've done, how much you've done, and just move on, because it's part of the job. You have to do it, but you found that balance. I think it's super valuable, and for people who are listening, I think that's something to take away, because even for me, and everyone goes through that adjustment time, and you want to do everything and anything, but you can't. You build your strength, as you said, and if you have a couple of weaknesses, that's fine too. Just find good compromise that doesn't drain you as much, but you still can do the job, and you can do your job very well.
Definitely, yeah. And I think awesome. The thing that kind of really brought that home to me was when the guy who owns the company I work for, he was telling me, and he's fantastic at, he's fantastic at his job, and he was telling me that he really dislikes the big conference events and how much he hates them, and he tries to get out of them as much as possible. I thought, oh my God, he owns the company and he can do it, so that means I can do it.
Exactly.
Why am I putting myself under so much pressure all the time, and getting drunk to do it because,
Yeah.
get drunk to get
Yeah.
through that. I mean, like, really, not good. But
No, 100%.
probably not making a very good impression, Staying all night, talking to everyone and just probably annoying everyone because I've had too much wine. Oh, God.
But if everyone can actually admit that that's their comfort level and that's how much they want to spend time. So can you imagine how much easier it will be for everyone if everyone just accepts everyone and everyone just is aware of what they can do, cannot do, do not want to do. And I think it would be much easier because I think right now everyone's just like, that's how everyone needs to be fine with it, love it, do it the same way.
Yeah.
Extra stress for nothing.
Yeah, we're not robots.
I think.
Yeah,
we're not.
It's different.
Oh, Julie, it was just amazing. I know our time is running up, but I feel like I can talk with you forever, and we share so many points that I think, like job-wise and just perspective-wise, it's just lovely talking to you.
It is. It's really nice.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I usually ask my guests about traveling, and you already mentioned you love traveling. So my question at the end of the interview usually is about travel and where do you want to go next and why? And if you could tell me, that'd be great because I think traveling is a big part of my life. And through my podcast, I try to talk about traveling because I meet lots of people while I'm traveling, and traveling opens up horizons. So I'm trying to tell people and maybe give them a chance to think about places where they want to go next. So if you could tell me where you would go next and why, that'd be lovely.
So I've got 3 trips planned at the moment. So because I'm a planner, obviously. True to form. So in a couple of weeks, I'm going just to Lanzarote. And this is, it's a family birthday. So I wouldn't choose to go. I've been there several times because for us, it's a very close flight. It's a short flight for winter sun. So I go there quite often just for some warmth and sunshine. So we're going for a family birthday. And while we're there, I've booked to go and do some scuba diving at Museo Atlantico, which is an underground sculpture park that they've done under the sea, and it's all sculptures and it's supposed to be amazing, and I've always wanted to go. So I'm going to do that when I'm there and tick it off the bucket list. And in September, we're going to Peru and we're going to walk the Inca Trail. So that'll be great. I've always wanted to do that. And in next year, in January, for my birthday, the big 5-0, we're going to Costa Rica. We've booked it. So we're going to go and do a week tour and then a week just relaxing.
Nice.
Just by the sea. Yeah, so.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely. All the places that you mentioned are just great. And I think worth visiting, spending time, just enjoying. Because traveling is something that, like you said, that's where I spend my money the most, I think, too.
Yeah.
So I think I want to enjoy my life, and traveling really gives me that sense of, I don't know, freedom and also learning and feeling good about me, other people, and sharing the perspective. Because people that I meet around the world showed me that we all are humans. Like, we all share same worries, same fears, same passions in a way, like we want to live good life, best for people we love. So I think that's what makes traveling so appealing to me. And I think people who are listening to me as well, I think many people are travelers. And if they're not, I usually suggest go and travel. find places, find new people, find new things. I think it definitely helps with lots of questions that you have in life. So.
Yeah.
Julie, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It was an incredible story. Thanks for sharing. And I'm wishing you all the best with your job and great travels ahead. And I hope we'll talk soon and we'll stay in touch.
Definitely. That would be great. Thank you, Anna. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.